All right, well, good morning and welcome to this January 14th, 2015 installment of Keystroke Live. Today we're going to talk about installing Keystroke, and everybody has kind of run the setup and all of that, so I'm not going to go there, but I'm going to get a little more behind the scenes and look at some what goes in what directories and things like that. Remember, it's same time every Wednesday at 10 o'clock, same login information. Now, talking about Keystroke installation, we do send out CDs still, and if you need a CD, we're happy to send it, but typically we'll email you a link to the setup and the product ID. After that, we have the Keystroke update installer that you can use, and if I switch, hopefully you see that now. This is the Keystroke update installer. When you install Keystroke, this gets installed. You get the choices of a full install or a patch update, and basically with internet download speeds and everything now, we recommend doing the full install even whenever you're doing an update. You get everything. It's not, the patch actually is a patch. It creates an alternate directory, patches in all the files, and if everything patches correctly, then it copies it into your Keystroke directory. So if one file is mismatched, if you happen to add a character or edit the README file, the patch won't run. But the full install, just all the program files get installed right on top of the existing ones. So that is basically what we recommend. It says 80 megabytes. It's probably getting closer to 90 or 100 now, but again, with download speeds, that works out pretty well. So we'll go back to PowerPoint here, and I am going to mute everyone except me because it'll get a little background noise there, but I'll open it up at the end for more questions. We recommend that the drivers for third-party hardware that were typically always on the CD are now available on the website. And if I go to the website here, and hopefully that is showing. I select Support, Software Updates, Keystroke Updates Library, and we have this third-party hardware devices here. So when I select that, that's everything that was on the CD for Digital Persona, ID Tech, Ingenico, Magtech, Cayenne, not Merchant Warehouse Genius, and Topaz, UIC, Verifone. So these are easy to grab. We've got instructions. It's all right here on the website. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. I think I've got it there. Remember, you need Windows 7 or better, Windows Server 2008 or later. 2003 still works, but it is being sunset first part of this year too. When you do the installation the first time, you're prompted to install the Windows Help file. We used Windows Help. They took it out of Windows 7, so there's just a little patch that has to run to get the Windows Help installed. We like it if you install it in the Keystroke directory. If it's in Server, Apps, Location 1, Programs, Keystroke, that's often hard for us to troubleshoot things in tech support. So you should be putting it on a server or a machine that is pretty dedicated to doing your point of sale. So installing it in the Keystroke directory below the root is always a good decision, makes it simple for troubleshooting and tech support too. You do the full installation, so you run the setup.exe on the server, and then that installs a program, setup.ws. So in the keystroke directory, there will be a program setup.ws.exe, so you can go to each of the workstations and run that setup.ws.exe and use the client is what we recommend. And what that allows for is then when you do the update, you can update the server and the rest of the machines will be good to go. Remember to manage icons and shortcuts. When you install Keystroke, you get 2 shortcuts installed in the program group, one to Keystroke that's just plain vanilla and it opens in the data directory, and one that's sample data that opens the information in the tutor directory. If you're using batch files or startup switches that we are going to talk about in the next 2 weeks, you want to be sure to know that, okay, here's an icon that starts with the switches, the icon in the program group doesn't. You might want to change the icon in the program group so that it will use the same switches as one that you might have on the desktop, because we have seen situations where you get a lot of icons going and one person clicks one and one clicks the other and it starts with different register numbers or maybe a different configuration file or printer file, and that can cause some confusion. So it's just good when you're doing the install to get a leg up on that so that it's more streamlined for the user. Now I'm going to talk about how the files are organized into the directories when you do the install. I'm not actually going to do the install. I think we've all seen that when we've put Keystroke on a client's computer, but I'm kind of talking a little more about what happens and what goes where. So I'm going to switch, and I tried to make my hopefully we see this. Tried to make my text a little bigger so things are maybe acting a little weird. But when you install Keystroke, so I've just got my local disk C and I installed it in Keystroke right below that. These are the directories that get installed. There is your tutor directory that has data in it at the installation. So when you start that up, it's got some invoices and inventory items and customers, because if everything's just blank, sometimes it's confusing to look at. The important thing to remember about that tutor directory is when you do another full install, the tutor data gets written into that directory again. So anything you've done in there will get overwritten. It truly is a sample test data, and it'll get refreshed every time you use it. So on the good side, feel free to hack it up, because the next time you do a full install, it'll get refreshed. The other thing is, well, if you want to copy your end user data in there, it'll get copied over when you do a full install again. So you might want to use a different directory. By default, the data directory is where data goes. You doesn't have to go there. You can use a /D or as a startup switch, or data dir equals in an ini file to change it to store 1, store 2, store 3, whatever you want to. So if you want to do some sample data for your customers, maybe you create a directory that you call sample or test or whatever you want to, and you put the data in there for them to run with. Also in here is a files directory, and if I open that up, you see there's a lot of files in here, and these DBS, these are the default database screens. They have that extension KRF, keystroke reference file. So when you start a new set of data and it doesn't have database screens, it basically just grabs these files, and that's how they get initialized. So if you're doing tech support and somebody says, hey, something's screwy with the screens, let's delete them out, and then when you start Keystroke, they'll reinitialize. They're basically just getting copied from this files directory into your data screens directory. If we take a look at that, if I go to Keystroke, I don't have, it hadn't initialized data there. If I go to tutor, you'll see there is a DB screens directory, and in here are all the database screens. I could delete these out of here, and then when I start the sample data, they'll get reinitialized. And how do they get reinitialized? Well, it's basically just this files directory. It takes them out of here. There are some other things in the files directory. The most important, and I'm whipping by everything, is at the bottom here is this ws.ini file, and this is a sample ini file that's got just about everything you could do with an ini file in it. If I open it up, and now I just have to get it shared, hopefully, so you can see. I think that's got it. It's the ini file. It's a sample file. It kind of describes it, and then it just gives you all the possibilities of things you can do. Screen position, border styles, what you do with the status bar. So it's kind of an example of almost everything you can do with an ini file. Go ahead and close that and go back to my files directory. So when you install Keystroke, you get this information in the files directory. There's also a forms directory. In here are your forms, invoice statements, purchase orders, and they basically all have an identifying extension, AUT or authorization files, PRD and WPD or printer drivers. Here's a Bixalon NVC is an invoice form file. So all of your form files are in here. If you create custom form files, this is where you would just copy them in here. Or if you're at a client's location, you create one and you say, hey, I want to take that with me. You'll find it in the forms directory and pull it out. How does Keystroke know what to display? It will display for invoices whatever here has an extension of NVC. If you want to limit the selection, you can remove files from here, but remember, when you do a installation, all those files will get added back into the forms directory. And if you're doing a patch and one of the files you deleted happens to get patched, then you'll get an error and the patch won't run. These directories here are just pictures of what the forms look like. So remember, when you're selecting a form, you can always hit F3. If there's a picture in one of these directories, it'll pop up. If there's no pictures, it'll just give the form description. We also have sounds here, so if you wanted to add sounds, you could put some more sounds in here. We've got our animals, music, different kinds of sounds. So the other directory I wanted to talk about is the reports directory. And this is where labels, price tags, and reports go. They all use the same generator. Anything that starts with an underscore is one of our default forms. So those are all the tags, and then here are all the reports. So again, if you make custom reports, remember, if you make a custom invoice, you'll look in the forms directory. If you make a custom report, you'll look in the reports directory. So this has all the different reports. You can move them around. You can copy in extras if you've done things. You can remove them, but again, they'll get added back in when you do a full installation. If I go back to my PowerPoint, again, this is just, it's organized into directories. We talked about the data, the tutor, the files, the forms, and the reports. So I am going to unmute everyone, and that is just, I'm trying to give a little more detail about the installation. Yeah, you run it, but you run it on the server. You can do the setup WS from the workstations. That way it's an easier update process. It's good to keep it in the Keystroke directory. A lot of dealers I know will install it on a server and then maybe share the Keystroke directory as K: or J: or whatever, and that's a fine way of doing it too. Easy to get at and not too complicated, but we just try to keep it simple. That helps us doing tech support as well. We're starting a series that is, I'm talking about installation. Lynn is going to talk a little more about startup switches in any files next week, and then the week after, Mike Tabor is going to talk about starting Keystroke and using batch files to do things like start other programs, and when that is not a good thing to do. So we're just trying to get a little more in-depth with this series. So I will open it up. Does anyone have any questions? About keystroke installation, not a super complicated topic, but there's a lot you can do with it. So next week will be startup switches and any files with Lynn. Same time, same place, Wednesday, 10 o'clock. Thank you, everyone, for attending.